I decided to tell the story because I stumbled across a newspaper article about this law that came in 1988 in the UK and was a law until 2003. And despite the fact that I was at school throughout that time, I had no idea that this law had been a thing and how deeply it would have affected my life and many of the lives of the friends that I have. And that was really the starting point. I started thinking about what it must have been like to work as a teacher under that law, or as when public perception of queer people at that time was the way that it was. But also I was thinking a lot about how little has actually changed since then, and how institutionalized homophobia exists all over the world right now. And actually people are always talking about how far we've come, but I feel like there's a long way to go. It was a relatively straightforward casting process. We were sent lots of tapes, lots of brilliant actors, but Rosie just was able to embody all of these kind of conflicting emotions that Jean has going on under the surface with this amazing stillness. And I felt that her performance allowed us a window into that internal experience. The script was very internal. A lot of what happens is in her head. And so I was looking for someone who was able to kind of communicate all of that complex emotion and anxiety without doing too much. And Rosie just got it. Like 5 seconds after I started watching her first tape, I knew that she was the Jean that I had imagined when I'd written the script. And I had sometimes found it difficult to communicate exactly who that was when I was talking about the film, but as soon as Rosie sent her first tape, that she understood her in the same way that I did, and that was what was so special about that collaboration. Yeah, it's shot on 16mm. I had always planned to shoot it on film. I wanted to create something that was inspired by classic films from the time, rather than a film that alluded to the 80s through costume and production design. I wanted to dive more into a slightly more subtle approach to the era that felt perhaps a little bit more timeless. I was born the year that the film is set, so how authentic it is up for debate, but I feel like for me, realism wasn't always the most important thing. It was, we did a lot of research. The production designer, Soraya, and I, and Victor, the cinematographer, we dug into loads of documentary photography from the time, and we were inspired by that, but we also wanted to use a sort of subtly heightened verite instead of more of a kind of documentary handheld approach. It was always going to be pushed into a slightly more heightened space. That was the plan. I mean, everything in the film, in that sense, is real. It's either mined from my own experience, or the experiences of people that I know, or the experiences of people that we met through the research process of the film. I mean, even down to conversations that I had in the film about things like the nurses' strike that they discuss at the party. I remember looking at, in a newspaper called The Times in the UK, we have letters to the editor. And in the 80s, there were letters to the editor still. There's a page of letters to the editor. So people would write in about things that they were outraged about. And sometimes that would be to do with gay rights, or to do with the nurses' strike, or things like that. And I mined these newspapers from the time for people's real opinions on political things that were happening at the time, TV shows even. I took inspiration from real voices who had written into these papers saying that they were cross about something or unhappy about something, and I took the essence of that and infused it into the characters' discussion, because at that time obviously there was one newspaper that you would get in the day. You wouldn't have a phone with 5 million different news outlets, so if it said something in the newspaper, that is something that you would take home with you, and if it was something negative about the gay community, then that would be the only thing that everybody read in the staff room at school. So I was really interested in that. Well, Hélène, the producer, and I bonded when we first met about 5 years ago. We bonded over our love for French cinema and European cinema, and we talked about films that were able to sort of Trojan horse, do you know that expression? It's films that sort of transpose very important messages or explore very political ideas, but through the framework of, disguised by the framework of a really good story that hopefully distracts you from the bigger issues that are being discussed. And I think European cinema, particularly French cinema, does that in a way that it pairs this sort of slightly heightened feel with the real struggle, the day-to-day reality of you know, what it is to be alive. And I think that was something that we both loved, and what we set out to do with this film. And our cinematographer is French, our script editor was French, our sales agent is French. There was definitely a huge European influence in that sense. Arguably it's better, but I spoke to a lot of teachers who were working in 2018 when we started developing the film, and lots of them still said that they weren't out to their students in the school because they were worried about the kind of backlash that they would face. So they were still hiding their identities in 2018 when we started researching the film. So yes, things have changed in some ways, but I was motivated to tell the story because I feel like the narrative that says that things have progressed a lot allows us to be a little bit lazy in terms of continuing to push forward that change. And some things are better, but a lot of the microaggressions that Jean endures in the film are actually experiences that I have had or that people I know have had now, not in the 80s. And that was important to me because I wanted to kind of draw parallels between what was going on then and what's going on now, and how laws like this may not exist in the UK anymore, but they do exist in other places, and in fact they're being introduced in places like Florida right now. So.